Wave your hands in the air. Wave your hands in the air like you just don't care.
And this is generally how I do everything. So, I do use presets. I'm going to go ahead and throw that one out there. Ain't nothing wrong with it. It gives you a good base. It kind of gives you an idea of where the picture can go. But like this picture, it is with anybody that uses a DSLR knows. You take a couple test shots, you review it, you adjust your settings appropriately, and take another test shot, so on and so forth until you get to about where you want to be. See, even with a preset, you can tell all of these are just blown out. The good thing about Lightroom, though, as long as you shoot raw, the majority of the time you can save it. See, look at that. Not all blown out and mess. Let's see. There we go. So you can get it before and after. That's just with a preset and pulling the exposure way down so it's not like that. I mean, right off the bat, and see, I mean, you could pull it way down. So I'm not using any fancy equipment to take the photos. And you can buy, I didn't even buy Lightroom. If you go to Adobe Creative Cloud, right here, you can get packages. I never go in here, so I can't figure out where stuff is. But anyway, you can get the packages, and I think it's like 10 or 15 bucks a month for Lightroom, Lightroom Classic, and Photoshop. The three basics you need for like $15 a month. The weird looking lady in the bottom corner. I appreciate that, Robert. I appreciate that. It's glad to see somebody's in here that cares. Oh, I love that. Look at that. But yeah. Alright, so we're here with a preset. See, that preset's a little better. The shadows and stuff aren't as... But, okay, so you see how the preset has changed all these sliders? I mean, except for this one because I've messed with this one. But, that's all the preset does. It moves these sliders around. Okay? So we got a before and after. Alright. There we go. Okay. So, say we wanted to use this. Doesn't look bad. Maybe we wanted to go with this one, or that one, or this one. Hey, that one's not too bad either. That one's not too shabby. It's all in how you want it to feel. Like one of the usual ones I use is this one. So, I mean, the whole thing with you're gonna hurt my feelings. You're gonna make me cry, Robert. But the whole thing with photography is just like any other form of art. It's subjective. It is what you want it to be. So edit how you like it. You're editing for you, not for other people. I mean, it's like, see, I look at some of this and I'm like, that's not for me. You might like that. But let's go with the one I originally had. Similar, anyway. Okay. So, what I'm going to do is, I like how dark this is. You can see the high, and then pretty much you just play around with the sliders. See the highlights, how it blows everything out. Highlights are exactly what it says, highlights. So if you bring them down, you can see that up in here turns like that grayscale color because that's where the sun and stuff is hit, and it's also like lightened all that. But you see how you turn it down too far, it like doesn't look right. So if you bump it back up just a little bit, you start bringing that stuff in. And your shadows, these shadows are all the way up. If you bring them down, obviously it messes with the shadows. Anywhere there's a shadow, like it's pretty self-explanatory. Here, the whites, they're bumped up. You bring them down, you see how everything kind of fades. Anything with any sort of white in it. Blacks, same way. It'll make your blacks blacker. At the same time, if you bring them all the way up, you see how it kind of like flattened it out. Whites all the way down, blacks all the way up, whites. You see how that kind of like blew it out, like. And then if you go back over here and you click on your preset again, it'll reset everything. So if you screw it up, you can kind of fix it. Yeah, and I want to win the lottery. We'll see how that goes. No, I do need to make your poster though. I might surprise you with Dick or Die in December. All right. So, play with the sliders, kind of figure out where you want it. Let's see. I like them a little darker. Don't tell my wife. See, your contrast, how it kind of brightens everything up. That kind of darkens everything. We'll bring the shadows down just a little bit. Bring the whites up just a little. But that's pretty much it. And you go through each photo and you kind of, all right, texture. Pay close attention. You see how everything kind of starts blurring? It blurs the edge of everything. You got to be careful with texture, clarity, and dehaze. It will throw a photo all out of whack real quick. Usually what I like to do is, most of the time presets, they'll mess with these, so just keep an eye on them. Clarity. When you add clarity, you see how everything starts to pop, but you see how dark everything got. I'm putting the shop together at the house, gonna hang it up. Fancy. And you see if you take it all the way down, how it kind of softens everything. So, but mainly I work full picture, mostly background. I'm more focused on the background at first. I get that how I want. Dehaze, it'll add, I'm not entirely sure what dehaze does, I'm going to be honest with you. But I know if you move it this way, it turns everything white. All your like shadows and stuff, it turns everything kind of whitish. You see now it looks kind of comic booky right in here. And if you turn it this way, it makes the darks darker and kind of fades everything. I do know if you use it on like windshields and stuff, it knocks a lot of the glare out. But let's bring dehaze back down. We'll add just a touch. Your vibrance, how it's not saturation, it is how bright the colors are. Vibrance. I mean, so like you can bring that all the way down, but you see how there's still some wood tones. Any saturation, like that's obviously how much color is there. So let's bring this back to a reason. If you double click on, like, see the cursor is on vibrance, if you double click, it'll reset it. So like vibrance, I'm gonna bring it down just a touch. I'm gonna bring the saturation down a little bit too. That way the wood looks a little faded. Okay, now you see how it's got like an orange tone to it? everything's orange. You can mess with your temp and kind of see how that goes. It changes the whole like color profile. See, now it's blue. You got more of a black and white right there. Start bringing it in. I kind of like that. Let's go back a little bit. See how I kind of grade everything out. You just play around with it. I mean, that's really all you do. The tint stuff, I don't really mess with the tint unless it's like obvious when you apply something. Because tint will, see how everything's starting to turn green? And then if you go the opposite way, like it messes with a lot of stuff. So I typically try not to mess with tint too much. Alright. I usually leave this tab open, but I'm going to close it just to make this a little easier for you. Sorry, I'm thirsty. A little ASMR in there. Alright. Tone curve. Play around with this a little bit. Most of the time I like how the tone curve is on a picture before I mess with it. But like, these are your highlights and stuff. Your highlights, your shadows. You can see, general rule of thumb is you don't make big changes with a tone curve. You make subtle changes. See this line right here in the middle? That's your balance. Your basic, like if I didn't have a filter on there, it'd be straight, right? So then your highlights usually bump up just a little, and your shadows usually bump down just a little. See, if I change this, see how everything like a lot darker, and I got to figure out where it was. Kind of like it about right there. If you move it up, it like flattens out some of the colors. See how you really screw something up if you're not careful. Let me see, right about there. I like it right about there. And then this is your highlights. It's kind of a flat. It's a little brighter. More flat. There you go. And you can put different points, obviously. And they have it for your RGB. Alright. This is where you start messing with colors. So, notice how I was saying everything looked kind of orange up here a little bit? That has to do with this. You go in here. You see how now they're kind of a reddish color? Bring them back out. Now they're more yellowish, greenish. You're mixing colors here. It's like finger painting. You're just mixing colors. You move it around, then you can mess with your saturation, see how it got more orangish. Then there's no orange. Your luminance is how bright or dark the shade's gonna be. So like, see how I bring it down and it turns, but now it's really bright. So you gotta pay attention to your colors. Like your red, see there is some red in there, but not a lot. This is where you gotta be careful too. Like I said, I'm messing with the background. I'm trying to mess with the background more. Well, in a minute, we're also going to be messing with your subject. So, you got to be careful when you're messing with all these that it doesn't throw your subject off. By the way, if you're doing cars, this aqua and this blue right here gonna be enemy on windshields. Color grading, I typically don't mess with this too much. As you say, this is midtones, shadows, highlights. See, now my highlights are like a yellowish color. You obviously move it around. So, and if you click on it, afterwards you can drag it in a straight line. So let's add a little bit of yellow tint to it for the midtones. the highlights. I do not want yellow. See about adding a little bit of orange to it. And then your shadows. I don't want to add that. See how I kind of gave it like a warm vibe? And then this, just like that's a flat picture. And then kind of just adjust your highlights and stuff a little more. You do your balance and blending and all right. You detail. Typically don't mess with that too much. Lens correction, transform. Oop. I don't ever mess with that because that is like your axis and stuff and twisting and turning. I never mess with these two really. Effects, vignetting. If you want to bring them edges in, your midpoint. That's kind of how far in you want it. How round or square. And then highlights, darkness, you feather. Do you want a no feather? Do you want to be able to tell there's a ring around it, but barely? Or do you want to kind of feather it in? You can add grain. I usually don't add grain. Calibration. This is a big one. Watch this. You come down here to your blue. Everything has a little bit of blue in it. Look how it changes all those colors. Like I said, you're finger painting. And here, you're adding more or less of one color, but it's changing everything. Same thing with your saturation. And your hue, like, see, kind of like that. Greens. You just kind of come around here and play with some sliders. See, we're getting somewhere. Alrighty. Now the fun part. Go up here. Lightroom has made this very simple as far as you click that button, select subject, select sky. Like you can, I'll pull up some pictures here in a second. We'll mess with the sky a little bit. Select subject. Alright. You see how it selected this, but it also selected a little bit of this back here. We don't want that. So we're going to go to subtract. We're going to go to our brush. I'm going to drop this brush down some. And then you just hold your mouse and you brush away the stuff that you don't want. We're going to get all up in there and a little bit back here. Let's see. All of this. It's okay if you brush something that you're not supposed to brush because you can always go back and add. There's an add and a subtract button. So like these areas that get a little too close, go back, hit the brush, and go back in there. There you go. You leave if you do a little bit on the edge, I mean, you're not really going to notice it too much. Oop. There's a piece back here, and we want to brush in the license plate. See how I went a little bit outside on the license plate? That little bit of feathering you're not really going to notice. Like it's not going to stand out. So it's okay. Like you don't have be as close as you can, but you don't have to like buy a tablet and pencil it in and stuff. So we're still in here. We've got everything how we want it. I'm going to hide the overlay. Now watch this. Whee! Can't see shit. But, alright. So now we can mess with just what we've selected. So when you brighten something up some, you also want to add a little contrast. That way it doesn't just look bright for no reason. You want everything to kind of flow. This is usually where I mess with the highlights the most. Because like you see how kind of like shiny it looks. And then shadows. See how I brightened everything up? It's because it's knocking them shadows out. I usually bring the shadows up just a little. And the whites I usually play with. See how it kind of grays everything out? I don't like that. But I also don't want it as bright as it is. So we'll bring those out. Blacks I always bring down just a touch till it feels right. See, like that would be too much for me, personally. I mean, you might like that. I do not like that. And then we bring them up. See, it brings the whole image up. So, but you got to be careful with your blacks. Before anybody makes a racial joke, you got to be careful with the blacks on here, because when you add your texture and especially your clarity, it's going to add a little black to it. And then if you add dehaze, adds a lot of black to it too. So like your texture, we're going to bump that up just a little. Clarity, you see how things are kind of like getting darker. Bump that up just a little to add some extra definition to this to make it stand out from the background. And then dehaze a little bit. It helps take care of some of the glare. Gotta get my words together. Jesus. Saturation, I'll play around with it some. See how it turned it like a bluish color? I don't want that. But I also don't want to pull everything out of it. So I'll reset it here, and I'll probably just bump it, just a little nudge, just nudge it. All right. While we're in mask, I'm gonna go up here. I'm gonna do a radial gradient. I'm gonna drag it over this, just like this. Now this center section is where it's most concentrated. This outer section here is your feather. So see, now there's no center section. It's 100% feathered. And if you do that, it's just one. So your feathering is how well it blends into. You can rotate it and everything to kind of fit. I'm going to invert it so we bring everything down. I'm going to bring this exposure down just a little bit more. That way it kind of highlights the centerpiece, right? Now you see this white right here. I'm going to show you two tricks. One, you can use a linear gradient. Sometimes that'll work. Let's see how it also is over our photo. You can go back in and subtract all that with the brush, or delete that, get rid of it. You can just start with the brush. And you can come in here and you can do this. Boom, 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 boom. You can get a little wild with it. Look at that. Everything you brush is going to have the same, whatever you tell it to do. So like, well, bam, look at there. It's like I cut it straight out of Photoshop. But what you can do is, now you can darken that area. Yeah, that's a little extreme, but you get the point. What I would do is bring it down just a touch to where it's not so noticeable. Probably increase my blacks just a little. And then I would come right over here and I would paint the rest of this floor in like this. So it all kind of blends. And then to combat over here with these whites, I would. Now you can adjust this. See? That makes the space in between the lines is your fade. Is your feathering. So if you bring it all the way up, you get a harsh line. If you bring it all the way back, you see my point. Let's bring that down just a touch. Alright. Now you see how that messed with the vignetting? I'm going to come back down here to vignetting. Bring it out some. Like that. There we go. I would say, and just to finish it off, I would probably bring this here. And then I would really darken that up so it draws your eye to this. So I would say that picture is done.
That's it?
That's it.